You're listening to the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, your host, Ben Eagle. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you are listening. Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 209 of the Meet the Farmers podcast with me, Ben Eagle. We're in Wales again today, meeting dairy farmer Gwyndaf Thomas. Gwyndaf owns and runs a 430-acre dairy farm in the rolling hills of Carmarthenshire in West Wales. The herd consists of 270 outdoor-run autumn calving cows, mostly Friesian, but also there's a few Jersey crosses in there. And the cows are grazed rotationally on grass. Gwyndaf grew up on what is now his brother's farm, and he moved to his family's other farm once the family had expanded. He has 4 teenage children, and there's also 1 full-time employee on his farm, in addition to Gwyndaf. On top of this, he's a partner in another local dairy farm, so he's a busy guy. In 2016-17, he lost all his cows to TB, and had to establish a new herd from scratch, which was a truly difficult time. And so Gwyndaf knows all too well the pressures of TB, which, of course, we unfortunately cover again and again on the podcast, and it doesn't really seem to be changing as a situation. Anyway, Gwyndaf, welcome to Meet the Farmers. How is your week going? I know that you had a TB test yesterday, and I hope you're doing well.
Hello. Nice of you to invite me onto this podcast of yours. That's what I've been doing this anyways. We had a clear TB test yesterday, thank God.
Right.
I was really nervous the night before. Could see a few cows here with some small lumps on them, but they were sort of avian TB lumps. And the vet said it's nothing to worry about. Hopefully all done and dusted now for another year.
Good, but it's I imagine, just putting myself in your shoes, especially going back to 16, 17, there's no such thing as an easy test.
No, it's just pure Russian roulette, really, the way I look at it.
Tell us about Carmarthenshire, first of all. Let's talk about where you are.
Carmarthenshire is home, really, for us. Biggest county in Wales. It's a high proportion of Welsh speakers. I think it's been pipped last year by Carnarvon in North Wales as the most amount of Welsh speakers in the county. We're sort of out in the sticks, but not out, if you know what I mean. We're Carmarthen town itself is 15 minutes away from here. We're 40 minutes from Swansea, hour and a half from Cardiff. We're not too far from civilization.
Tell us a bit about the business, the herd, and where your milk goes.
Yeah, so the business here then is, like I said on your intro, then a 270 cow autumn calving herd, predominantly Friesians. Trying to keep things as simple as can be. Rotationally grazed grass right up until drying off. So we're in the middle of drying cows off at the moment, and we'll start calving again from end of August onwards, right up until end of November. So as they start calving, and depending on weather conditions and grass in the autumn, they start coming indoors, and we wear all our heifer replacements and sell off any bull calves and beef surplus calves, as long as we're free of TB. They all either sold privately through various contacts, or we take them to local mart, and we've got a mart in Carmarthen. And the milk goes up to Newcastle and into a cheese factory called Dairy Partners, and they make mozzarella out of it. And that's all they do there is mozzarella. I think the whey then leaves Newcastle Emlyn to go up to the powder factory in Aber. I don't know what they do with it. I think they were doing milk powder for calves, but I think also they do a lot of these protein drinks for sports companies. But people want these whey protein shakes and stuff like that.
Okay. I mean, anyone not in dairy probably won't know quite how hard it is at the moment, this period in particular. We were hoping that probably going into the fourth quarter of the year that things might be improving, but it's a tough year in dairy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's no fun at all at the moment. When you look at the bank statement, we've got the carryover of the high costs, the input costs from last year. Feed prices have eased back a touch, but not much. Fertilizer now has eased back, but obviously fertilizer would have been bought I certainly bought some stock of fertilizer last autumn, and I sort of begrudgingly spreading it around the place here, knowing that it's 30-40% cheaper now than what it was last year. I can understand from the government's point of view, they want to get inflation under control, but so there's a major push on food prices, and the milk companies have responded as well. The price now is 15-18 pence a litre less than what it was this time last year.
No, it's definitely one of those periods, which I know that the pig sector gets as well. It's like sort of it's just one of those stick in there years, and things will hopefully turn around again. Let's go back a bit. So you grew up on what is now your brother's farm. What was the farm like then, and just give us an idea of how it's changed over time?
So yeah, Mum and Dad bought the home farm then they took it on in 1976. I was born in 78, and my sister a year later, and my brother a year later again. So three of us are quite close in age. Yeah, Dad's passion was just milking cows. He himself and my mother then both grew up on farms, and but he had a passion for horses, and he was a jockey for a while.
Oh, really?
In his part of the country, and ultimately settled down to become a dairy farmer. And to get established quickly, they bought cows and put them to a beef bull, so kept a flying herd, and realised that seemed to work right. It significantly less capital outlay required and fewer wearing all around replacements, and it was a very good way to get established. So within 6 or 7 years, you could say they were up to 200, 220 cows milking on a grass-based system, although strip grazing in the summer and self-feed silage in the winter. So as we were growing up, we were keen on farming as well, and loved everything about farming. But we also could see that we wanted, myself and my brother, wanted to go down the route of maybe breeding higher yielding cows and getting a mixer wagon. And the age was coming then in the 90s of mixer wagons coming onto the market, and the availability of straight feeds as opposed to just buying concentrates. So yeah, over time the herd had expanded, and we've gone down that route. As kids growing up, looking back now, since having these list of questions of you, and like how on earth we managed to escape childhood in one piece, I don't know, because we were so semi-feral.
Yeah. I mean, either way, you went through that, and you eventually went to Aber to do a degree in agriculture. But while you were there, your dad had an accident, which meant that you ultimately returned to the family farm. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and what happened?
Well, I initially went to college with a lot of farmers' sons, and they just loved their machinery. And I wanted to do agricultural engineering to start off with.
Okay.
But I switched to do agricultural business. I went to Aberystwyth in 97. It was supposed to be just a straight 3 years course in Aberystwyth. But I was offered the chance I had a bursary with Wednesday, and I was offered a chance to work with them for a year as a gap year then. So Wednesday I think they'd just become a PLC then, and they were a company based in Mid Wales, and they were just starting to expand. They'd gone into partnership with a feed mill in Carmarthen. So for a while I could spend my time in Carmarthen with them. And Dad had just had his 50th in 1998, so I was starting my year out with Winster then. In February of 1999, I was up in college, and he'd had an accident on the farm then, from what my mum was saying then, that we were milking together one afternoon. And my father had went to sort of hold a freshly calved heifer steady whilst my mother could put the milking unit on her. And from nowhere, a cow was bullying in the yard there, two cows were jumping on each other, and one of them sort of came into the back of the milking parlour where my father was standing in and just squeezed him up against the frame of a milking parlour. And at the time, he didn't think anything of it. He just was, say, badly winded, and he just went to sit down on the step there outside the milking parlour just to get his breath back. And he was fine. They carried on, finished milking, washed down and everything. And a day or two later, he was complaining of sort of tight chest and shortness of breath. So my mother convinced him that he needs to go and see to the doctor just in case. And they didn't think anything of the fact that he'd been squashed in the milking parlour against the stonework. He reluctantly went to the doctor then a few days later, and the doctor then sent him straight to the hospital in Carmarthen. So for a period of days there, they were treating him initially for sort of a heart condition maybe, and but he was perfectly healthy, even though he'd had a history. He'd been smoking years ago when we were kids, but he'd given up on smoking many years before that. And within a week of going to the hospital, he passed away. He'd had this thing called, if I pronounce it right, it's either mediastinitis or mediastinitis. It's an infection in the cavity between the lungs and the heart. And basically, from what the doctor said then, that because of the crush that he'd had, there was a weakness there, maybe a slight crack in one of the ribs that they actually couldn't even pick up on X-ray, and that had become infected and had infected that cavity then. So that's affected us for a long time, really.
Yeah, no, completely. And I mean, in the short term of that time, I mean, that must have been utterly horrendous for you, your brother, your sister, your mother. But in the strange way that that family farms work as well. So you're not only going through that, you also then have the issue of what happens with the farm day to day. So can you take us through sort of that experience?
Well, I was up in Aber and Mum phoned. I knew that Dad had gone into hospital, and you think, oh well, it's just a checkup, he'll be fine. And Mum said, no, you better come home. The doctor wants us all here. Dad's deteriorating. So I went home, and we were lucky then. My uncles came up to our uncle and came to help with the milking and feeding, and neighbours as well. They were great in helping out as well. And so as a typical dairy farm, the day-to-day running of the herd still has to carry on and stuff like that. So so that was it's kind of a blur, really. And if truth be said, once the funeral had been and everything like that, well, obviously neighbours and family were coming to help with milking the cows and feeding, because this was February coming into March. Well, cows were still in, and and you've got to appreciate that these people have got their own families and own businesses to see to as well. And I was on my gap year then with Wednesday, and they were really supportive. They sort of, if you need time at home, don't bother coming here. Sort of make sure everything's right at home, and just go back outside then and pick up on things that need doing. We're coming into spring, slurry and muck needs to be spread. The fertilizer needs to go out, stuff like that. And if the truth be said, maybe really we should have paid somebody to manage the place for a good couple of weeks, or certainly a fortnight or so, and for the family, for us, my mother and my brother and I and my sister, just to go and hire a log cabin somewhere and just go for a fortnight and be together and properly mourn. I do feel that in subsequent things that have happened with the family over the years, that it all comes back to that, not having that time together, properly mourn who lost them. So you can kind of see then how you sort of bumble along for a while, and then things come along and you tackle them as they confront you, not having had the chance to sort of sit back and mourn and properly look at what we're about, what we're doing, are we doing the right thing or not.
This episode is being supported by our primary sponsor, A-Plan Rural. Why did I want to collaborate with A-Plan Rural? Well, having got to know them, their team shares my passion for giving a voice to farmers, and we are both driven to raise the profile of farming voices to a wider audience. So it seemed quite a good fit. Quite frankly, together we will be able to do a lot more. A-Plan Rural do a lot of work on social media themselves, sharing farming accounts and farming stories. They have a rural community blog which shares farmers' experiences, and they also support a growing number of initiatives that champion UK farmers, including this podcast. So a big thank you to A-Plan Rural for supporting Meet the Farmers. Really, really tough time. And actually that's testament to all of you and that sort of ongoing basis that, I mean, you grew and developed the business, and eventually you actually, as your families grew, as your own families grew, the two farms. So your brother is still at the farm where you grew up. You're on the other farm. How did that come about in terms of, I suppose, deciding to take that step?
In 1995, then we took on this farm where I'm living now. And Dad was all gung-ho about everything. You know, the sort of mantra was bigger, faster, more. Like, we just wanted more cows. We just taken on this farm. Well, I even remember before this, just before we took on Pennegraig, where I live now, then, you know, when Dad, keen and eager, wanting to expand and develop, he felt that, you know, we had a system of milk quotas back then that was just hindering any progress whatsoever. And I remember us as kids, we went as a family down to Carmarthen. There was a guy who'd come over from Canada with a seminar about Canadian farming, and we went, and Dad was hooked on it. I remember sitting on the top of the landing there, looking at him down in the hallway. We had the phone. There was no mobile phones. The landline the phone just permanently on a bit of a working top there in the hallway. And we sat there for hours talking to guys farming in America, and this would be late at night.
Okay.
And he'd be talking to Canadian farmers to see how they're getting on and the costs and the paperwork and everything. And he gone as far as going to the Canadian Embassy in London to have an interview. And it was just a case then of buying a ticket and going out to Canada to view some farms. And Dad was really, really keen on going. Mum probably not so much. And then my grandfather, Mum's dad, then had a massive heart attack.
Oh gosh.
That sort of put the stop to those plans then.
Right.
So,
things could have been very different then.
Yeah, we could have been. Yeah, he was seriously looking at Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta and the Midwest areas in Canada. With my grandfather then seriously ill in hospital, that could have stopped all those plans. And then this place came up, and Dad just went for it. And but we didn't start milking; we were just keeping young stock and beef cattle over here. Dad passed away in February 1999. Lot of land came up on the market just down the road from here later on in June, July of that year. And Mum and myself and my brother were looking at each other and thinking, well, if Dad was here, Dad would go for it. Let's go.
And in terms of where you're going from here, sort of where you'd like the business to go, what would be your plans?
Over the years, then we carried on with the system of rightly or wrongly, carried on the system of a flying herd where we put everything to beef. And as time was going on, I could see as well that things were changing. TB was becoming, whereas up until the late 90s, TB was not an issue. So being a flying herd wasn't an issue. But as time was going on, I could see, coming over the brow of the hill that the Welsh government weren't doing much about the Badger Protection Act had come in, and more and more cases of TB being heard of. I was starting to think, well, we should really start rearing our own heifers so that we can have a buffer, because when you're running a flying herd and you get locked up with TB, then you've got all these beef calves that you can't sell.
Yeah.
And then all these barren cows that are going, and you can't replace them. So, and at that time as well, you could also see there was a change of, you know, when mum and dad were running a flying herd back in the 80s and in the early 90s, the cows that were for sale were predominantly Friesian, but as time was going on, they were becoming more Holstein. So your grass-based system wasn't really suiting. So you can sort of see how the evolution of cows then being housed and then TMR feeding and then 3 times a day milking came into being. And so up until sort of 2007, 2008, there would be between the two places just over 800 cows on a high input, 3 times a day milking. You know, the Eastern European, the availability of Eastern Europeans came about in 2004, so we were one of the first to get Polish people in here. And touching on that, that was also a difficult thing to have at the time where I was only 21 when Dad passed away. My brother's 3 years younger than me. And, you know, wanting to do our thing on the farm, but being at such a young age as well, where when it came to wanting extra help on the farm or employing people, kind of everybody was older than you. And trying to, without, you know, we didn't want to come across as somebody who's young and cocky and knew it all, because we obviously didn't. But trying to get people that are older than you to try and get what you want to do, found that to be really difficult. Which Polish people turned up, then we didn't find that an issue. There's a language barrier to start off with, and they were willing to crack on with doing things. So, so over time, I can see that we made it 2 years old as well. We expanded quite fast, and we acquired a significant amount of debt as well over time. And so just looking around, seeing that there's a large proportion of dairy farmers here in West Wales that are really glass-based, block carving. They'd sort of embraced the sort of New Zealand style of things. And I could look at over the heads type of thing. They were doing all right for themselves, and they might have been annoyed when milk price dips or goes down, but they never seem to have the same hassle as what we had when we were running our sort of high input system. And I sort of thought there must be a better way of doing things, both economically and environmentally and socially, because when you're on a high input system, it's go all the time, So coming back from what I said earlier on, of the things that have happened in the family over the years as well, since Dad passed away, is again not having that time to sit down together initially to properly mourn my father's loss, but with the system then that we sort of evolved, again, not having the time to sit back and take a sort of a world view of it and make proper decisions on how the business should go forward. So, towards 2010, 2012, things were pretty awkward at the time. And in 2015, his mum by then wanted to retire and everything, so the business was restructured. So I took on this farm, and my brother took on the whole farm, and everybody went their separate ways.
Just a little more about our primary sponsor, A-Plan Rural. They provide bespoke insurance cover for farms and estates. This could be for anything from tractors and machinery to a new exciting diversification venture. So for more information, visit aplan.co.uk/rural. That's aplan.co.uk/rural. In terms of challenges and opportunities, I suppose, of where you're sitting today, how do you see the lie of the land?
Challenges, or I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, challenge number 1 is Welsh Government, challenge number 2 is Welsh Government, challenge number 3 is the challenge is that number one here in West Wales is TB and Welsh Government. inability or unwillingness to do anything about it is just holding everybody hostage, really. And even when you're sending barren cows to a slaughterhouse, you think to yourself, well, if you need to buy something in, then let's buy something in first, because if something goes and they find TB on it, then we're locked up then, which then has the implication on cash flow, because you've got to spend the cash before you're getting it in. Things like that, On top of that, the issue that it's having and the pressure it's putting on families and staff and everything like that.
We're going to start to round things up. So I'll ask you the last few questions. The first is, Gwyndaf, what is your message for the public?
Well, the message here for the public is shop locally, support your local farmers, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Rather than just Googling it or going on Twitter and listening to the mombiots of this world, then ask the farmer. Try and find, there's plenty of farms, or open farm Sunday and things like that. It's a great place to find information and don't look at things in isolation. We live in a complex world and everything like that. Some people say that cutting back on meat will save the world, cutting back on so-and-so will save the world. There's a whole range of things, and it's very nuanced. We don't know all the answers, but don't be afraid to ask questions and talk to farmers and listen to their stories, because we're all human at the end of the day.
And your message to your fellow farmers?
Our message to fellow farmers is, let's not overcomplicate the job. We're our own worst enemies sometimes when we complain about the weather, we complain about high costs, and I'm sure I've done a bit of it here now. We complain about everything, but we're also, when it comes to attracting people into the industry, sometimes we just overcomplicate the whole thing. I had since going on this system and changing to a grass-based system, and when I restocked after losing the cows with TB in 2017, I had a local lad come and work here. He wasn't from a farming background, and he couldn't believe, once he got to know the gist of things and milking and sending cows out to pasture and allocating paddocks and stuff like that, he couldn't believe. He thought it would be far more complicated than what it actually is.
Okay.
When his brother came to visit, and his brother lives in London, and he brought a few of his friends here, and they were here one weekend milking with him. And I thought that was really nice, because if those guys then, with those guys going back to London, and if anybody was going to stand up to them and say something derogatory or negative about farming, then at least they could say, hang on a minute, we spent a weekend on a farm in West Wales, they were outside, the weather was tidy, they were looked after. So, and I think more of that we need more of that connection with the general public, but more so with the general public in towns and cities then.
And finally, your recommendation for a blog, podcast, or social media account to follow, which can be farming or non-farming.
Well, there's a podcast I tend to listen to, which is a Welsh one, Ear to the Ground, farming stuff. That's a good one. I do tend to listen a bit to David Maguire in Ireland, and it just offers a perspective, from an Irish perspective then, of people looking into the UK. Sometimes that's a good one. And another one, Pub Meals with Jacob Anthony and Paul.
Yeah, of course.
Bit of a laugh. Yeah, those would be my recommendations.
Fantastic. We'll leave it there for today, Gwyndaf. But thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for being so just so open about your story. Because blimey, you've been through a lot there in various sort of guises, and I think where you've taken the business and how you've been able to sort of remain. I think the word resilient seems to be used a lot at the moment, but I think your story is definitely testimony to that. So just really well done, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. That's it for today. Big thanks to Gwyndaf for coming on the show. If you haven't already, please do like and subscribe to the show wherever you're listening. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Next time, we'll be in the Southwest, meeting Liz Bowles, who is a sheep farmer, and she's also CEO of the farm Carbon Toolkit. Thanks again to Gwyndaf for today, and to our primary podcast sponsor, A-Plan Rural Insurance, for supporting the show. Please see the show notes for more information for any links mentioned today. For now, though, I'm Ben Eagle. This has been Meet the Farmers. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you all have a great week.